There comes a point in every human journey where the soul begins to whisper, softly at first, then louder, that life was never meant to be lived in fear. The book, Why Courage Opens the Door to Abundance, begins from this sacred whisper. It reminds us that abundance, in wealth, love, peace, creativity, or purpose, is never something to chase. It is something to allow. And what allows it is courage, the quiet, consistent act of choosing faith over fear, and truth over comfort. The author leads us gently through the understanding that abundance is not just material prosperity. It is a state of fullness, a way of living where you trust that life is on your side, that you are guided, and that the universe expands in response to your bravery. Every time you act with courage, you move closer to the infinite flow of possibilities that life holds for you. But every time you shrink, doubt, or hide, that flow constricts, not because abundance disappears, but because fear clouds your ability to receive it. The book invites the reader to look honestly at fear, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. It explains that fear only blocks abundance because it closes the heart. A fearful person cannot receive the blessings meant for them. They are too busy protecting themselves from imagined dangers. Yet courage, even in small doses, melts this resistance. It allows love, intuition, and opportunity to move through us freely. As the author says, courage is not the absence of fear, it is the gentle decision to move despite it. One of the most touching parts of the book describes an artist who had hidden her paintings for years, convinced that no one would value her work. When she finally gathered the courage to share her art, she didn't just find buyers, she found healing. Her courage didn't just open financial abundance, it opened emotional abundance, the joy of expression, the connection with others, the freedom of self-acceptance. This story captures the essence of the message: when you act in courage, you expand the field of what is possible. The author reminds us that abundance is not given to the most talented, the most educated, or the most privileged, but to the most aligned. And alignment is found through courage. It takes courage to be honest with yourself. It takes courage to walk away from things that no longer serve your soul. It takes courage to believe in your worth when the world tells you to settle. And every courageous act signals to the universe, I am ready for more. A powerful metaphor runs through the book, that of a closed and open hand. When we live in fear, our hand is closed, tight, protecting what little we have. But when we live in courage, our hand opens. We become generous, with love, ideas, gratitude, forgiveness. And in that openness, life can finally give back to us. The message is simple yet profound. Abundance doesn't come from holding tighter, it comes from releasing. The author also explores how society conditions us to fear failure and rejection, yet these are often the very experiences that shape our strength. Courage transforms failure into wisdom. It turns rejection into redirection. It teaches us that every no is simply guiding us toward a greater yes. When we view life through this lens, courage becomes a spiritual practice. We stop seeing obstacles as punishments and begin to see them as invitations, opportunities to grow, to expand, and to trust more deeply. Throughout the book, courage is portrayed as the bridge between the inner world and the outer world, between intention and manifestation. Many people pray for abundance, the author says, but few have the courage to act on the guidance they receive. Abundance flows not to those who wish, but to those who move. Action is a declaration of faith. Every time you take a step toward your dream, even a trembling, uncertain step, you tell the universe, I trust. And the universe, in turn, opens its doors wider. There is a deeply spiritual undertone to the writing. The author weaves in stories of people who dared to live from their soul, entrepreneurs who left safe jobs to follow their calling, parents who chose forgiveness over bitterness, and individuals who faced illness with grace and acceptance. Each story reveals that abundance takes many forms. Sometimes it is financial freedom, other times it is peace, love, or inner joy. But it always begins with the same spark: courage. The author also dismantles the myth that courage is grand or heroic. Most courage, they say, is quiet. It happens in the small moments: the morning you get up to try again after disappointment, the moment you speak your truth when your voice shakes, the choice to believe in possibility when the evidence hasn't yet appeared. These are the unseen acts that shape destinies. When practiced daily, they reprogram the mind to expect abundance rather than lack, trust rather than doubt. The book also touches on the spiritual law of reciprocity, the idea that what you give in courage returns to you multiplied. When you give love, you receive love. When you give effort, you receive progress. When you give forgiveness, you receive freedom. Courage fuels this law. It gives you the strength to give when it would be easier to withdraw. It allows your life to remain in motion, and where there is motion, there is abundance. In one of the book's most profound passages, the author describes courage as the language of the soul. The soul doesn't speak through fear, fear is the language of the ego. The soul speaks through courage because courage aligns you with truth. It reminds you that you are not a victim of circumstances but a creator of experiences. When you begin to see yourself this way, abundance is no longer a distant dream, it becomes a natural consequence of who you are becoming. The closing chapters are deeply reflective. The author guides the reader to imagine what life could look like if fear no longer held power. What relationships would flourish? What dreams would unfold? What healing would occur? It is a powerful invitation, not to change everything at once, but to take one courageous step today. For every small act of courage shifts the entire field of your life. The transformation described in the book is subtle yet profound. People who begin fearful and uncertain end up standing in quiet confidence, not because all fear has disappeared, but because they have learned to trust themselves amid uncertainty. And that, the author says, is true abundance, the inner knowing that no matter what happens, you can face it. That you are supported, guided, and connected to something far greater than your fear. Ultimately, Why Courage Opens the Door to Abundance is not a book about wealth, it is a book about awakening. It teaches that abundance begins where fear ends. When you stop hiding your gifts, life rewards your honesty. When you step forward in faith, doors appear where walls once stood. When you let go of control, the flow of abundance finds you, naturally, effortlessly, beautifully. The message lingers long after the final page. Life will always meet you at the level of your courage. So, ask yourself, where are you holding back? What dream waits behind your hesitation? And what if, just what if, the abundance you seek is already here, waiting patiently for you to be brave enough to receive it?